Okay, welcome to another episode of the Immigrant Education Collaborative Podcast. Today I have a very special guest, very special guest, a dear friend of mine, Angel. Angel, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Derek. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Thank you for taking the time out to do this.
No
Um,
problem.
I think we're gonna have a fun episode. So before we get started, I think I mentioned this to you before. I said I've known you for a long, long time. But I
Yeah.
haven't, but I need to know what you've been up to, and then I get to learn about your full story, right? So just to let everybody know before we get started, I've known you since, I don't know, a long time. Like our moms are really good friends, so I've known you like
Yeah.
a long, long time, right? Like probably,
Yeah. We were teenagers.
yeah,
If
yeah,
that, yeah.
yeah. So like over 30 years. But
Yeah.
I
I
don't know
knew
what you've
about
been up to.
you.
Yeah,
I knew about you before I even met you
yeah,
because um your mom used to tell my mom that she had a son that was my age.
yeah.
So before I even, because I think when you came from St. Vincent, did you go to Canada? Or did you come straight to New York?
Straight to New York.
Yeah, so I knew when you were leaving St. Vincent to come to
Yeah.
New York. Like that's
Okay.
how much I heard about you. So it's funny, like you've always been around, kind of deal.
Yeah.
So, but since last we seen each other, I was in college the last time we saw each other. I
Mm-hmm.
graduated with a degree in logistics and marketing,
Mm-hmm.
and then I had a minor in statistics and a minor in econ. I originally wanted to go into international business and go back to Trinidad
Mm-hmm.
to work as an international trade lawyer. And then I realized I wasn't set up for suffering. That is called law school.
Yeah.
God bless people who go to law school.
Right, right.
So I changed my major like my senior year, and I got a degree in logistics. And then I went to work for Toyota in the West Coast. So I was
Mm-hmm.
gone. I left for uh, three 3 or 4 years, and then I came back after 9/11. The week after 9/11, and it
Yeah.
was planned. It just so happened that that was when I came back, and then I continued working in logistics. I worked for Toyota. I worked for Hacks in their information systems
Mm-hmm.
as an analyst. I worked for Kraft Foods, Nestle, Johnson and Johnson. Went back to Toyota, and then while working at Toyota, I had what I told you was a third life crisis. I wanted to be of service, and went to nursing school, and started off very slow. Got my associate's degree in nursing, sat for my RN, got my bachelor's, and I have since completed my master's, and I now work as a family nurse practitioner. Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. No, I love that. So this is a really cool career trajectory or career sort of path that you've taken. So we're gonna parse this out a little bit. So talk to us. We're gonna start at the beginning. Talk to us a little bit about because I want to see how we got to where you are, right? So talk to us
Mhm.
about like growing up with your parents. I think your grandma was in education also. Is that true?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
ironically, my grandmother was a teacher
Hmm.
and had to stop working as a teacher when she got married. She was from Dominica,
Hmm.
and so, but back then, education wasn't universal, and so she would write letters on behalf of people in the area.
Hmm.
And then when she immigrated to Trinidad, um, people knew of her, and so they would come and they would say, teacher, I need your help. And so, ironically, I never called my grandmother grandmother. I always called her teacher because that's what everybody who
Yeah.
would come talk to her would call her teacher too.
Right, right.
And so, but she was a teacher, and then my mom was a teacher, um, and she taught English, I want to say, and Spanish, French, and Latin. She will
Hmm.
correct me after she watches this episode, I'm sure. And then my dad taught, I want to say he taught math.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Okay.
education was very important in my home.
Yeah. No, this is huge. So you got grandma,
Yeah,
you got mom and dad, like everybody's
yeah,
involved in education, right? So what was that
yeah,
like for you? And especially being the oldest, right? Like
yeah.
what was your experience like? Were the expectations high? Was it a lot of pressure? Like how did you handle having so many people in your family who were in education, believed in education, wanted the best education for you. How was that experience?
Very horrible. They were I have PTSD. I have three boys now. One's in ninth grade, one's
Yeah.
in eighth grade, and one's in fifth grade. And I don't know who dreads the beginning of school more me or them,
Hmm.
because I swear every year I have PTSD
Hmm.
about school. I wasn't, so I was one of those kids that tested very well, was inherently bright, but never lived up to the expectations, especially the expectations of a Caribbean parent.
Hmm.
Um, and so school was traumatizing for me at best,
Hmm.
because especially coming down here, the Caribbean community was so small down here.
Hmm.
Everybody knew what everybody was doing. I called it the Caribbean connection.
Hmm.
So everybody knew everybody's children's grades. Um, it was social media before you had actual social media. Who's going to college? Who's doing this? Who's doing that? And
Right.
sorry. And
Hmm.
then I remember when I was, let's see, I remember I used to, my first love actually was hair. I loved doing hair.
Hmm.
And I remember telling my mother, I was like, she was like, well, where do you want to go to school? I was like, actually, I would love to go to hair school. My mother was like, that's a, kind of deal,
Yeah.
right? She was just like, you can go to hair school after college.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And so school was always, always stressed upon. And then, being from the Caribbean, um, in America, you have more diversity in terms of careers you can pursue.
Hmm.
In the Caribbean, you can go into accounts, you can go into medicine, you can be a lawyer, you could be a teacher, you can go into banking, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
everything is kind of along those broad categories. Here in America, there's so many different variants. And so when I went into logistics, they didn't know how to describe that to their friends.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what do you do?
Yeah.
And I would try to explain to them, and they're just like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
It was like that shirt you have on, a logistician had to make it.
Yeah.
So you make things.
Yeah.
Yes, I make things. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So
Yeah.
it was a challenge for them when I went into logistics. I loved it though.
Hmm.
I still love it.
Hmm.
How I transitioned, um, I couldn't have children, and I started hitting the age around 30, 33. I made peace with the fact that I probably would never have children.
Hmm.
And so then I started thinking about my legacy. And what I did within logistics was process improvement. And so I started computing the totals of how much I'd done. And I think I've hit like $2 million in process improvement
Hmm.
benefits. And so I was like, that would be my legacy, when I die, is how much money I saved companies. But did I do good in the world? And
Uh-huh.
so my desire to go back to school and go to nursing school came from that desire that if I couldn't have kids and my legacy would be of service, then I'd rather do something like nursing. So my whole goal was to go to nursing school. And then, it was, you'll love this. And then I was going to go to like Doctors Without Borders and help
Hmm.
women have children, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I got pregnant during nursing school.
Yeah.
So that never happened. That never
Right. Right.
materialized.
Right. There's
So,
still time.
yeah. No, 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 I'm
Yeah.
done. I have three children now, so that's my legacy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool, cool. So here's the thing. Talk to me about how you settled on logistics and to begin with, right? So like you go to high school, are you thinking logistics in high school at all? Is this even on your radar? Like when you're in high school,
No,
you're going through high school, what are you thinking about? Like I know you said you love hair, right? So you're in the hair, you're probably doing your hair, you're doing your sister's hair, other people's hair.
that
So how do we get from high school where logistics is nowhere on your radar to then going into logistics like after college? Like how to like
I
talk us through that.
I was poor.
Yeah.
I was poor, and so my intention was always to go to to go to law school, so that part of the draw of law school was that I wouldn't be poor anymore, right?
Hmm.
Um, And then when I remember interviewing, my mom worked at a law firm, like your
Mm-hmm.
mom,
Mm-hmm.
right? And my mom set me up with like a first or second year associate. And talking with them, their lives just sound dreadful. And I was
Yeah.
just like, well, how long do you work? And they're like 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah. I remember this one guy, he was like 25. No, he was 27. He showed me a coffee mug and he was just like, my girlfriend bought me that. I haven't seen her in 3 months. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, how much money do you make? And I think he told me it was 90,000. I was not impressed with 90,000.
Yeah.
Um, if you work there 18 hours a day. So I started
Yeah.
doing the math and I was like, you're there a long time.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to go? This sucks.
Yeah.
And then I had entry marketing class that I was taking. My professor, I'll never forget, he started talking about the wave of the future's logistics.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Maryland, and Maryland had the number one logistics program in the country at the time.
Mm.
It was
Yeah.
Maryland and Penn State. And so I was like, So then I am industrious because I'm
Mm-hmm.
from the Caribbean. And so I changed my major and then I got an internship. Um, I somehow convinced Johnson and Johnson to hire me for an extended internship for 7 months in New
Mm-hmm.
Jersey
Mm-hmm.
while I was in school, and to see if I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, and I was good at it. And and then I was able to leave school with, I think I had 9 job offers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up taking Toyota. So really, the short answer to how did I go to logistics? Money.
Mm-hmm.
Money
Mm-hmm.
back
Mm-hmm.
then,
Yeah.
it's like, Wu Tang.
Yeah.
Cash
Cream.
ruled everything around me. It was
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
cash ruled everything around me. It was like
Right. Right.
logistics, you'll make money. Sign me up. Here I
Right.
am.
Right.
I'll make
Right.
it work. So
Yeah.
that's how I centered on logistics. And then along the way, I found out that I was really well suited for it and I was
Yeah.
good at it.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, and then it just kind of went that way.
Yeah.
So it worked out.
Yeah.
I still miss it to this day.
Yeah.
I Part of the reason once I found out I was pregnant, I was what you call a true workaholic.
Mm-hmm.
There would be nothing for me to be at work for 24, 36 hours straight working on a
Right. Right.
project.
Right. Right. Right.
And so when I found out that I was pregnant, and I had the opportunity to stay, even though I was in nursing school, I could have quit and I could have remained at Toyota because that was the last logistics place that I worked. I knew I would not be able to give that baby my full attention
Mm-hmm.
and be the kind of parent that I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
So what I love about nursing is there's so many different types of nursing, right? I was an ER nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but the nice thing about nursing is that I come from my shift, I do what I'm supposed to do, and then I leave.
Mm-hmm.
When I worked in logistics, I never left. I
Mm-hmm.
slept with my phone. Something went down, a line
Mm-hmm.
went down because I worked in
Yeah.
manufacturing and
Yeah.
warehousing. So those are 24-hour a day operations.
Yeah.
Something went down. When you get to a certain position, you're responsible, even if you're not physically in the building.
Mm-hmm.
But in nursing, I'm not responsible. I
Mm-hmm.
hand off to another person.
Yeah.
And so it was really good for somebody with young children,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, but I still felt like I was doing good
Yeah.
for my community. So,
Okay. So I love this. So let's break this down a little bit. So I
uh
want
huh.
to so first I want to give your mom a shout out, right? Because I think one of the
Yeah.
things we're going to go through this piece by piece. So I think
Uh
one
huh.
of the things when you talked about exploring becoming a lawyer and going to law school, and then
Yes.
your mom was able to set up an informational interview with a lawyer,
Yes.
right, for you to go
Yes.
talk to this person. This person
Yes.
described a day in the life of a lawyer. Like this is what this is what my work schedule looks like, and you were like, okay, based on how much you're working and how much they're paying you, I don't want to do this, right? So I
Yes.
think that was a good thing. So imagine if you didn't do that and you just had this idea of what a lawyer would be like, and then you went to law school, and then you end up at a firm, and you end up with the life that this lawyer had, you'd be miserable. So it was good that,
Yes.
in hindsight, it was great that you got to talk to somebody,
Yes.
candidly have a better understanding of what an actual day looks like. So I think that's crucial, right? So that's the
Yes.
information, right? So that's really dope. The next thing I want to highlight you about is your initiative where you said, okay, you learned about logistics. Maryland had one of the top logistic programs in the nation. And then you just were like, all right, I'm all about the money. Let me go and chase this thing. And then not only did you go chase it and you took the initiative, but you got good at it, right? So then
Yes.
eventually you became, like passionate, really good at it. Then it got to a point where you're like, okay, this is kind of, it's a lot. It's overwhelming. Like I'm good at it. I'm doing well. The money's good. But then the quality of life, especially once you're about to have a kid, that changed, right? So
Yes.
I love how you sort of navigated these transitions, right?
Yes,
And your decision making process. I think that was really dope in hindsight. What do you think?
I was. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
for that. I,
yeah,
I'm very pragmatic. Um,
yeah.
I do not believe in suffering unnecessarily, although
Right.
I can suffer for a goal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one of the things I always joke around, like I never dealt with peer pressure because I pretty much could look and be like, if I do that, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to do that kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've kind of um, allowed my career to follow that trajectory of, and so with like law school, I've always, there are things about law school and the things about logistics. And I think when you and I talked earlier this week, there are key things about my personality, things that I'm good at that
Mm-hmm.
would translate in law school. It translated in logistics. It translates in nursing. I
Mm-hmm.
love to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what allows me to be very allows me to pivot as
Mm-hmm.
quickly as I do.
Mm-hmm.
I, if I get to a point where I'm saturated then I'll get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I always need to be, my interest always needs to be piqued. I'm a very curious person. I
Right, right,
enjoy perpetual learning. And
right.
so the idea of going to school doesn't frighten me,
Yeah,
right? The
yeah.
idea of being uncomfortable for a goal doesn't
Mm-hmm.
frighten me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why for me, going back to school, going from making very, very, very good money,
Mm-hmm.
um, and being respected in my industry. At one point at Toyota, I was the only woman. I was the only Black woman, but I was the
Mm-hmm.
only woman in the country that was doing what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so to go from there,
Mm-hmm.
where I had a certain level of authority, I had a certain level of confidence,
Mm-hmm.
I had built enough collateral in the company that I was getting to the point where I was going to have to start making plans to move again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was hard to walk away,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
but I was able to look forward and say, one of the things I looked at was in '08 when we had the economic downturn.
Mm-hmm.
I realized my livelihood was directly tied to an industry,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That frightened me.
Yeah.
But going into something like nursing, there's so many things I can do with nursing,
Right,
right?
right.
So uh in my career, I've worked in mother baby, I've worked
Mm-hmm.
as an ER nurse, I have taught, and now I'm a nurse practitioner. I have in the state of Maryland where we are, I have the ability to own my own practice.
Mm-hmm.
I can go teach at a community college.
Mm-hmm.
I can be a medical director
Mm-hmm.
of a facility. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many things that I can do. I can own a Medi Spa. There's so
Yeah.
many things that I can do so that my income is not tied to an industry. It's not
Right,
tied to a company,
right,
right?
right,
It's tied to how hard I'm willing to work.
right. And what
And
you're open
so,
to.
right, and what I'm open to.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, even though I miss working in logistics
Yeah,
dearly, I like the flexibility and I love the ability to have more freedom over my life.
yeah.
I'm not working for somebody,
No, this
you
is
know?
this is this is really dope, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tee you up, and then you're gonna just paint this picture for me. Because
Uh-huh.
what I'm hearing from you is you have an um, incredible capacity for self-awareness, right? Like you're very aware of
Yeah.
who you are, right? You talked about
Yes.
like, you love to learn, you're inquisitive. So how much of that comes from sort of the environment that you grew up in, right? With having like folks in your family who are in education, they are learning is something that is rewarded, respected, expected. How much of that do you think helped to shape um, your ability in terms of you being at peace with the decisions you make going forward? Because it seems like you're very self-aware, but you're also at peace as you make these decisions, right? There's never any like regret or doubt. You're like, this is what it sounds like to me. So correct me if
Yeah.
I'm wrong. So tell
No,
me how much of the environment that you grew up in like helped to lay that foundation that allows you to kind of navigate and move through these decision-making periods in your life where you're at peace when you make the decision.
everything.
Yeah.
So my parents had me very young.
Hmm.
And so I always saw them in school,
Hmm.
right? I remember when my mom graduated with her master's. I remember when my dad, like, I went with a friend of mine to buy a suit, and I can remember when my dad graduated and he went to start in the management training program to be an engineer.
Hmm.
And he took me with him to buy a suit. And I'm
Hmm.
like, where's your wife? Why am I coming?
Hmm.
It's like,
Hmm.
why am I here? And
Yeah.
he's just like, well, one day, you'll be married or you'll need to help a man buy a suit, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
And so he showed me how to buy a suit.
Yeah.
And my parents changed everything into learning opportunities. They created, as much as I tease them or I make jokes about they were Gestapos for learning, they really did encourage me to, they exposed me to so many
Hmm.
things. And I think part of it was we lived in New York. Um, they did not have much faith in the school system in America. They
Hmm.
felt like it was not very vigorous,
Hmm.
like it was in the Caribbean. And so they augmented a lot of what I did
Hmm.
at home,
Hmm.
which, much to my chagrin, was not fun to have an
Right.
additional 3 to 4 hours of schoolwork,
Right.
right?
Right.
My mother somehow found, when it was time for me to start high school, my mother found a high school that went year round in Brooklyn. I'm like, is that even legal? I remember
Yeah.
asking her if that was legal for me to go to
Yeah.
school year
Yeah.
round.
Yeah.
Aren't we allowed to have a break? And she was like,
Yeah.
no. But I think
Yeah.
part of it was they wanted to keep me busy.
Hmm.
Um, because they, even before I recognized it, they recognized that I had a natural curiosity,
Hmm.
and that if left to my own devices, I probably would get into trouble.
Right. Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
And so if I wasn't in if I wasn't in school, right, doing something, my mom had me in Spanish. She
Hmm.
had me taking karate. She had
Hmm.
me, and this is pre-internet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
So she would find programs for me to be in, and so it fed that natural curiosity about me. She had me in dance class. I
Hmm.
I danced from the time I was 4 until I was in my 30s.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I taught dance I've had a lot of jobs, but I taught dance in high school and college, right?
Right.
Because again, my love of money
Yeah.
and my love of dance, because I
Right.
wanted to, in addition to being a hairstylist, I wanted to drop out and be Janet Jackson's
Right.
background dancer. So,
Exactly.
um, so she had me busy, but she had me busy doing things that fed my natural curiosity. These people made me do book reports. She
Hmm.
gave me spelling words during the
Yeah.
summertime, 10
Yeah.
words. And she sat every Friday with a ruler in her hand, ready to beat me. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Yeah.
was like 10, 11, 12. I would have to spell the word, say the word, no, say the word, spell the word, say the word, tell her what, if it was a verb, a noun, an
Hmm.
adjective,
Yeah.
use it in a sentence. She made me write them in sentences. I'm like, this is summer. She's like, well, you don't want your brain to atrophy. The fact
Yeah.
that I knew what the word atrophy was at
Yeah.
10, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of what you see is that they prepped my brain, and as well as my resilience
Hmm.
and my stamina for pain
Yeah.
very early
Yeah. Yeah.
um, in life. And one through example, because my mom recently got her PhD.
Hmm.
I'm sure she told you, but she got it in 2019,
Hmm.
right? And so that's the example that I've always seen,
Yeah.
that you're never too old to reinvent yourself. You're never
Yeah.
too old to learn something.
Yeah.
And so my parents always told me, especially my dad, my dad always told me that if somebody tells you he's too old to learn something, to run,
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
never too old to learn something.
Yeah.
So I would say, in retrospect, my parents,
Yeah.
good, bad, or indifferent,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
the reasons why I am the way I am.
Yeah,
So
no, no.
yeah,
I think that's really cool. You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
the environment is kind of what prepares you for, when you do have to make these decisions on your own. And a lot of the decisions that you've made them, comfortably, right? And you're at peace with them. And I think
yes,
that's really crucial. You know what I mean? Like I
yes,
could hear it, I could see it in you. So talk to us about going from business to healthcare, right? You mentioned
uh,
like you sort of just like worked your way through. Your mom, your dad were very good examples for you of, pivoting and increasing your education attainment, at your own pace, right? Which is kind of what you
hmm
did, when you transitioned over into healthcare. But what has that done for you? And tell us about sort of some of the transferable skills that you took from logistics, from business, and how that, translates into healthcare.
Well, I can talk to anybody. So the nice thing is that my parents prepped me in a situation where, growing up we the way that we did the typical West Indian, you're very quiet, right?
Hmm.
You're
Hmm.
supposed to be seen and not heard, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
While I'm being seen and not heard, they're plying me with knowledge
Hmm.
about random things. So I'm awesome at Trivial Pursuit.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn how to speak. I had to
Hmm.
learn how to be confident, talking to people. And so when I went into logistics, not only was I in a field, I was in a male dominated environment as a management person. I
Hmm.
was a supervisor.
Hmm.
Um, and so learning how in a union facility. So
Hmm.
learning how to interact with people as a woman
Hmm.
in a male dominated environment
Hmm.
where you have to know your contracts. So I have to read my contracts and memorize them so I don't create an issue,
Hmm.
but yet still gain the respect, earn the respect of the people who I'm on this team with.
Hmm.
Um, that isn't any different than what I do in healthcare,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
I go into a room with a person, and within 2 or 3 minutes, I have to gain their trust so that they can tell me their deepest, darkest secrets.
Hmm.
Where did you put it?
Hmm.
Why did you put it? And they
Hmm.
have to be comfortable to tell me what they did with it and
Yeah.
why they did it, and
Hmm.
and not feel like I'm going to judge them, right?
Right, right.
And I learned all of that. Um, that stems from all of the experiences, this like the summation of all of my experiences
Yeah.
growing up, as well as working in the business world, because I had to learn how to quickly relate to someone,
Hmm.
right? I have to learn how to make them feel seen,
Hmm.
make them feel valued,
Yeah.
and allow them to gain trust within me.
Hmm.
To the kind of leadership style I developed while working in the business world was more of a servant leadership.
Hmm.
I've taken that over with me into healthcare. So when I'm with my patient, whether it
Hmm.
was in a hospital setting or in primary care now, the goal
Hmm.
is to educate. The goal is
Hmm.
to give them a sense of autonomy,
Yeah.
help them make decisions. It's not a one sided conversation where,
Hmm.
I'm the expert
Hmm.
and you listen to me. It's a
Yeah.
collaborative relationship where more
Yeah.
so I'm a Sherpa.
Yeah.
I'm giving you my information, I'm giving you my experience. But ultimately, whatever decision you decide to make,
Yeah.
I'm going to support you.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable enough, even if we're going down a road that I know is going to end up
Hmm.
in with bad outcomes. I'm comfortable enough to walk down that road with someone. And
Yeah.
I learned how to deal with being uncomfortable,
Hmm.
um, and being okay sitting with discomfort
Yeah.
from my from my
Yeah.
parents in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Um, and so I've allowed what I know and what I'm learning,
Hmm.
I've allowed it to translate from industry to industry, and
Yeah.
hopefully, um, the people that I've come in contact with, I've been honored that
Hmm.
I've had these experiences, and I hope that I've been able to extend that feeling to them
Yeah.
as we interact with each other.
Yeah. No,
Does
that's
that make
really,
sense?
it makes perfect sense.
Okay.
And what it sounds like is that you're doing a wonderful job and you're doing, you're treating people how you want to be treated. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And also how you would want anyone in your family to be treated. Like that's what it sounds like to
Absolutely.
me. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I'm actually setting you up by telling you this because I'm going to ask you a question and
Okay.
and, and it's going to tie all this together. So here's the
Okay.
thing, right? So you talked about PTSD in a sense, right? Like your parents being very stern and very sort of, like pushing you to be the best that you can be. Essentially, if we look back, we can kind of sum it up and say that they wanted the best for you, right? So they're just doing the best that they could based on what they knew at the time, right?
Right.
What's cool is that you took all that and you sort of like molded it into who you are. Like all these experiences help to shape you into who you are. So talk to us a little bit about how two things about how you like the different places you've lived, right? So you were born in
Hmm.
Trinidad, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you're born in Trinidad, you come to America, but you've also lived, you talked about how you got your internship with Johnson and Johnson, New Jersey, right?
Uh-huh.
Like you're very proactive, right? But
Yeah.
then also you've lived on the West Coast, right? You've lived a lot
Yeah.
of different places where you kind of had to go out on your own and kind of really make your mark in the world. And then, you move back to the DMV area. But talk to us about the experience about, in all the different places that you've lived, how that shaped you, but then also talk about how you're now parenting your children, based on your experiences, living all over, America, living, in Trinidad, living in America, living on the West Coast, living on the East Coast, but also based on how you were raised, right? Like when you take all those experiences, those life experiences that you've had, like what was was there like a point where when you had your first child where you're just like, okay, this is how I want to parent? And did you make any adjustments about parenting as you went along, with the second and the third one?
The key with me is, I think, one, I'm Generation X, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So we were given a little bit more freedom.
Hmm.
I'm fearless. I
Hmm.
hate being
Hmm.
afraid. Doesn't
Hmm.
mean I don't get afraid.
Right, right.
I hate
Hmm.
being afraid. And
Hmm.
so the things that frighten me the most are the things that I go after.
Hmm.
So I was very, very, very shy
Hmm.
um, growing up, to the point where I would not talk. I
Hmm.
remember my first presentation in college, I got a D because I couldn't even finish it.
Hmm.
By the time I finished college, I was giving presentations to everybody.
Hmm.
By my third job, I was giving presentations to groups of 800 people.
Hmm.
I do not, uh, uh, I do not allow myself to get paralyzed by the things that frighten me.
Hmm.
And I could see that when I worked in the ER during the pandemic. I was deathly afraid. I remember my son was 5, and one day I asked myself, what do you remember from being 5?
Hmm.
And I was like, I can't remember a thing. I,
Hmm.
I don't have any memories. And I remember being so paralyzed with fear that I was going to die and he would not remember me. And
Hmm.
it pissed me off so much. I
Hmm.
volunteered to work in the COVID unit,
Hmm.
and I worked there every shift.
Hmm.
And my dad was like, do you think that's wise? And I was just
Hmm.
like, I don't know if it's wise,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to be afraid.
Yeah.
And those are things. My mom is a little bit more cautious.
Hmm.
My dad, I get that from my dad.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if it's wise, but it has served me. It has
Yeah.
served me well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I, ve- I attack things that frighten me, and
Hmm.
so moving away by myself frightened me.
Hmm.
So I did it.
Hmm.
Getting a job, I'm really good in at analysis work, the way that my brain works. I'm
Hmm.
really good at noticing patterns.
Hmm.
And so being an analyst was like the surefire thing. You should do this. working with people, talking to people, that was a stretch. That was a
Mm-hmm.
muscle that was not strong. I
Mm-hmm.
chose to go work with people. I
Mm-hmm.
chose to speak with people.
Yeah.
And so now I work in an industry where I talk all day. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean at the end of the day I'm not exhausted,
Right.
but I've gotten to the point, and so my mom, as you know, my mom's very gregarious
Mm-hmm.
or gregarious, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
and I pretend in the beginning. I used to pretend, well, how would, and I, so she's going to laugh. I refer to her as Glenda, not in front of her face,
Yeah.
but behind her back. So I'd be like,
Uh-huh.
well, how would Glenda do this? And
Uh-huh.
then I would do it. And so that's how I started talking to people was, well, how would my sister do this? How would my mom do this? Because they can talk to anybody. They
Mm-hmm.
know, it seems like they know everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I chose people in my life that have the characteristics that I wish I had, and
Mm-hmm.
I emulated them until I got comfortable developing it into my own, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
And so did I answer your question? I think I
You did. You
lost
did. No, no, no. You got
you
it. So
guys.
so where it goes into now is like with those experiences, like how has that informed your parenting, right?
Ah, so I am gentle parenting.
Mm-hmm.
um, my children, I do not beat my kids. I do not beat my children. I talk to them. I encourage them to talk back to me.
Yeah.
Um, I want them to know, I want to know all their thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize growing up, my parents were afraid. They, I, as a parent, I realized that we are being parented by our great grandparents or our grandparents, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I see it. So whatever our great grandparents were going through, they they fashioned their parenting style to their children. Their children gave it to our parents gave it to us,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
There are things about the way I was raised that, like, being quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want my children to be quiet. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want my children to have to learn how to make a decision
Yeah.
when they're 20, 18, 19, 20 years old. I want them to learn how to make decisions now at 13, 14, 15, 16 in a safe space so
Mm-hmm.
that if they fail, right, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
The things that they're making decisions about, I can help them, I can guide them, but I can give them space so that they maintain their autonomy. They don't
Right.
have to reclaim it
Mm-hmm.
or or grow it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I want them to be able to feel comfortable in their personalities. I don't want them to have a home personality and then they go into school and they have someone totally different. I
Mm-hmm.
want them to feel free to be themselves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so what so far what I have seen with my boys is that who they are at school and who they are at home are pretty
Mm-hmm.
much the same people.
Nice.
they're they are very respectful. So even the fact that um I don't beat them, and when I say I don't beat them, right, I stopped spanking my children when I saw my oldest son spanking my youngest son
Yeah.
in a voice that sounded very much like mine, right? And
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
just like, oh, he's emulating me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how do I tell this little boy, I'm beating you and I'm causing you shame and I'm doing this in the name of love,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that was my reason for changing that. So now we have conversations. And the other thing is I very much want them to know that I'm a human being
Mm-hmm.
and I will make mistakes. And
Mm-hmm.
so and sometimes I will lose my grip, I try not to. But I get overstimulated too. I don't want it to be a shock to them that I'm a human being.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to very much know that I'm just as they are capable of making a mistake, so am I.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to know that, I want them to understand about forgiveness. So if I do something that bothers them, I want them to feel comfortable enough to come and tell me, that really bothered me. That really
Mm-hmm.
hurt my feelings, what you did.
Right.
And then I have the opportunity to apologize so that resentment doesn't grow. I don't want to be their friends,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I want to build a relationship that's based on trust
Yeah.
and honesty. And
Yeah.
so I think So far, it's been okay. It has been working.
Hmm.
The key for it is I never want them to walk away feeling like they're not seen and they're
Hmm.
not heard
Hmm.
and that they're not loved just as they are. Now
Hmm.
they are aware that I have expectations for them.
Hmm.
Um, I don't, but my expectations for them, their performance does not dictate my love for them,
Yeah,
if that
yeah,
makes sense. My
yeah,
love and
for sure.
respect for them,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So that love is never conditional. Now I may not like what they do, and I'll tell them I didn't like that decision you made. I
Yeah,
still love you as a person,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so the my goal is that if anything goes wrong, they feel comfortable coming and talking to me and telling me I need help,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
because as you know, working in education system, the frontal lobe doesn't it's not fully developed until you're 25. And
Hmm. Hmm.
so I and especially with boys, I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to come and talk
Yeah,
because I don't think we encourage our boys to talk,
yeah,
and so
yeah,
they hold things in. And then, who knows? They may be experiencing depression,
yeah,
anxiety, whatever the case may be. I want them to be able to know they can come and talk to me about stuff,
yeah,
and it won't go anywhere.
yeah.
So,
I think that's so interesting, right? As you're talking, I'm thinking about your mom. So
mhm.
your mom had two girls.
Yes,
So your mom was, the quintessential girl mom,
yes,
and then now you're like the
the boy mom.
quintessential boy mom. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes,
So what's interesting is, your mom and dad had to parent you and your sister, and navigate the U.S. education system, right? And you kind of went through the system in a way that your parents didn't go through the system, right? Like in terms
yes.
of, like elementary school, middle school, high school in America. And then now you get to walk three kings through the system
Oh
that,
gosh.
so how is that so far based on the experiences from your parents to you to now your kids? Like how are y'all navigating that space?
So, Derek, we could have a whole show
Yeah.
just based off of this one conversation. Because if you remember, my last name before I got married was
Uh,
Dookie, right?
uh-huh.
So you're trying to explain to two Trinidadian people the connotation that the word Dookie has in America that
Hmm.
does not exist in Trinidad, right? Because if
Right,
you
right,
say
right.
my name is Dookie in Trinidad, the most somebody would say is you don't look Indian, right?
Yeah,
Because my
yeah,
dad is half Indian, right?
yeah,
And so, but in America now,
yeah,
it's another way to be different,
yeah, for
you
sure.
know?
Yeah,
And the one thing you don't want to be as a kid is different.
yeah, yeah,
I have an accent. I
yeah,
wear thick glasses,
yeah.
and
You're quiet.
I'm quiet.
You're already a target.
Right. I'm poor. I'm quiet. I have glasses. I'm chubby. And my last name is Dookie, right?
Right. Yeah.
What it did do, what it did help me with is I'm really good with the comebacks.
Hmm.
As quiet
Hmm.
as I am,
Yeah,
I'm good
yeah,
with the comebacks.
you let them have it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And look, it I remember telling my dad, I was just like, because I don't think bullying really was a thing in Trinidad for some
Yeah,
reason. And I
yeah,
remember coming home and telling them, people are making fun of me. And they were like, so?
yeah,
And I was like, I don't want to go back to school. They were like, eh? You going
yeah,
back to school? It's like that. I could have told them that, I wanted to become Joan of Arc. They would have
yeah,
had more understanding of that. They were like, you don't want to go back to school.
yeah,
I'm like, I don't want to go to school tomorrow. They'd be like, you're going to school. And
yeah,
then my dad's response was to teach you how to fight.
yeah,
So imagine, my dad was like, well, if you're going to be people bothering you, you need to know how to throw and take a punch. Right.
yeah,
So that
yeah.
was his way of dealing with it.
Right, right, right.
Um, and my mom was like, it's not that bad because
Hmm.
they didn't understand, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
they didn't understand SATs.
yeah.
Um, and then I think looking back now, because my parents, when I graduated from high school, my mom was 36, 37 years old, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
To me, she was old.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then when I hit 36, 37,
Right.
I was like, holy crap, she had a high school. What? how did she do this?
Right,
I
right,
couldn't have
right,
done it.
right.
So I really expected her to have answers that even she at that time probably was just trying to catch herself
Yeah,
in
for
a
sure.
way.
Yeah,
And so having children, and I've told my sister this, having kids has given me a level of compassion for my parents that I never had before.
yeah,
It has given them depth and a level of texture
yeah,
to who they are as people.
for sure.
Because when you're little, your kids are like, when you're little, your parents are like very binary. They're
Yeah,
either they're villains or they're like gods, right?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, depending on the moment, depending on what's going on. And you expect them to know everything. And
yeah,
then one day you realize they don't know anything. And then, you're like, oh, these people, what do you
yeah,
want? And then you have children, and then you realize I'm just winging it
yeah.
second by second by second. I don't know what I'm doing,
Right, right.
and God bless me with a really amazing oldest child who is so patient with me because I don't know how he manages. Like, I'm just like,
Yeah,
even having gone through all the grades just about here in America, I
hmm,
did go back to school partially throughout the years.
yeah,
I still had a quintessential Caribbean
yeah,
experience because in New York, everybody was from the Caribbean, right?
right,
So we were
for
still
sure.
doing
Yeah,
Caribbean things,
yeah, for
right?
sure.
So really in high school, I only had 2 years of American high school,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I didn't meet my first real American person till I was like almost 16 years old. And
Right,
she's still my best friend.
right.
I like, so, when I tell you I'm still learning from my friends,
Yeah,
um, who have older children who have been so kind to kind of guide me.
yeah,
Homecoming. I
yeah,
didn't have homecoming in my high
yeah, yeah,
school.
yeah,
You know what I mean? We
yeah.
didn't have that stuff. That's an American thing,
Right, 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 right.
You have prom. That's it.
Yeah, right,
But you didn't have these like every night, every year in high school. You had
right,
football. We didn't have football in my high school.
right, right, right.
So we
Yeah,
didn't. So I still didn't have that quintessential American
experience.
experience.
Yeah, for sure.
And so now living here in the DMV, in the suburbs, I was joking around like my kids are soft,
Yeah,
right? They never played basketball with a milk crate tied
yeah,
to a
yeah, yeah,
fence.
right.
You
On a
know, they
pole.
Right. They
Yeah,
never had those experiences. They
yeah,
never lived in an apartment, you
yeah,
know. They never took a gypsy cab or
right. Yeah,
one of them fake dollar buses down Flatbush
right.
Avenue.
Yeah,
They've been in a subway station one time. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So the things that I experienced, I had way more autonomy and independence because
Mm-hmm,
I still was treated like I was in the Caribbean in New
mm-hmm,
York,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm. Yeah,
So the same way I would have made my way in Trinidad by myself, I
yeah,
did it in New York,
yeah,
negotiating with merchants at like 8 years old. I don't
for
know,
sure.
my mom liked it, but
Yeah,
I did it.
yeah,
My kids, I will drive my child a mile away to school.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you want to walk? No.
yeah, yeah. I got you.
So yeah, so it's a totally different experience. But
Yeah,
my parents, I have a new level of empathy, compassion,
yeah,
and even love for them
for
being
sure.
parents now
Yeah,
that I
yeah,
didn't have for them when I was without kids, because I'm like, this is hard,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
man. Yeah,
um and it gets worse every year. It gets harder every
yeah,
year.
yeah, for sure.
You think it
Yeah,
gets easier, right? But now the older they get, the more
yeah,
trouble they can get into, and you're
yeah,
just
man.
like, oh, heart in hand every time they leave the house,
Yeah,
and I'm
man.
just like,
Yeah.
I
And
just want to
three
I know.
boys, that's a task.
Yeah, I want to just put I want to tag them like they do animals in the wild and
Yeah,
just watch them with like a radar.
yeah,
I took
yeah,
So just to give you an example, I took a job that is 4 minutes away from my house so I can be closer to my children,
yeah. That's what's up.
you know, and luckily I have the ability to do that.
Yeah,
But that's that's just how much recognizing the potential trouble I could have gotten into
yeah,
you know,
Yeah.
it makes me now, as a parent, hover in a way that my parents didn't have the luxury
Yeah.
to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
if
No,
that
I
makes
think
sense.
no, it makes perfect sense. And I think we're gonna wrap this up, but I love the fact that you pay tribute to your parents. I think it's really important to think about your parents. Like when I started to reflect on my parents as children and what they went through,
Hmm.
it just helps me to have a deeper appreciation for them. You know what I mean? And
Oh,
especially
yeah.
when you think about your parents having you at 22, 23, or 18, you're like, man, that's really difficult because I look at, people that are that age and I'm like, I can't imagine this person with a child. You know what I mean? So I think it's really cool to hear you say that, you've especially once you become a parent. And for you, I mean, that 3 kids is a lot, man. A really good friend of mine says real parenting starts with 3 kids, because you only have 2 hands, right? So you
That's
got three
right.
boys. How do you separate 3 boys with 2 hands? You know what I mean?
You gotta yell.
You gotta
Like, I'm just
yell.
teasing.
Right.
I don't, I, no,
You got a parent. That's what you gotta do.
yeah, I luckily, like, I'll meet people and they'll tell me how nice, and I'm just like, those are the children God gave me. They're
Yeah.
truly,
Yeah.
they're beautiful people.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
truly are.
Yeah. And but I think here's the thing. I think they're a reflection of their parents, right? And I think that's the most important thing. Like for you, you're a reflection of your parents. I'm a reflection of my parents,
Right.
and your kids also a reflection of their parents. So I think that's the beautiful thing. So we're gonna wrap this up, Angel. I'm gonna bring you back. We're gonna have
Yes.
a deeper conversation. But is there anything that you prepared for that I didn't ask you? Did you prepare for a
No,
question that I didn't ask you? That you're like, you know what? He ain't even asked me this.
no, I
You sure?
think, yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think we went through everything. Is there
Yeah.
something that you asked that I didn't answer?
No, 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 no. You answered everything. I think
Okay.
this is a really I was looking forward to this interview, man. Connecting with you, and I'm so grateful that you took the time out to do this. Because again, I've known you for a long time, but there's so many
Yeah.
details to your story that I don't know. You know what I mean? Because we don't
Well,
talk often. So I'm grateful.
right. Well, I truly am appreciative
Yeah.
for you and what you're doing. I mean, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, I was telling my best friend about it because I work for her,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so we were talking about it, and she was reflecting about how much she learned as an American about growing up Caribbean.
Hmm.
And even like, so when I would call her house in the evening time when I was in high school, I'd say hello, good night.
Hmm.
And
Good evening. Right. And they're like,
hello, good
what?
evening, hello, good
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah. Good
And
afternoon.
so the cultural
Yeah.
differences
Yeah.
of, I taught her just as much as she taught me, right?
Yeah.
And so we were laughing about that, before I came to do to meet up with you and speak with you
Yeah.
today, because it's just one of those things where, you don't realize because you don't know,
Yeah. Yeah.
that there's a whole other world out there, the way people do things.
Yeah.
And especially back then, I feel like now everybody is a little bit more open and inclusive, but back
Hmm.
then everybody kind of like lived in their own little circles, right?
Yeah.
Their
Yeah.
own silos. So the
Hmm.
Caribbean experience might
Yeah.
be here in America, but unless you knew what to look for, we were basically very insular back
Yeah.
then. And
Yeah.
I
For
think
sure.
now with
Yeah.
social media and the internet, people are a little bit more exposed to what we
Yeah.
do and how
Yeah.
we do it. So,
It's a more fluid cultural exchange.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So,
Absolutely.
so we're gonna wrap this up. So thank you guys for
Yes.
joining us on another episode. Thank you, Angel. This has been another episode of the Immigrant Education Collaborative Podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.